Hey guys, tonight we're going to slow things down and sit with the story that matters. Meet Jamal, a 15-year-old with a heart bigger than the dusty Tennessee town he calls home. His clothes are frayed, his sneakers worn thin, but his quiet strength cuts through the sneers of those who judge him for his humble roots. In a world quick to dismiss him, Jamal's kindness is about to spark something extraordinary. Before we begin, please like the video and subscribe, but only if stories like this truly move you. Comment your city and the time you're watching. Now close your eyes or don't, it's your choice. Either way, you're about to witness something real. The sun beats down on the cracked asphalt of Route 17, a lonely stretch outside Cloverdale, Tennessee. Jamal trudges along the shoulder, his backpack slung low, the weight of textbooks tugging at his narrow shoulders. His faded red t-shirt clings to his skin, damp with sweat from the late summer heat. At 15, he's used to the sidelong glances from folks in town, the ones who see his scuffed sneakers and assume he's trouble or worse, invisible. Socioeconomic prejudice is a quiet venom here seeping into the way shopkeepers watch him too closely or neighbors whisper about those people in the sagging houses on the east side. But Jamal carries himself with a steadiness that belies his years, his dark eyes bright with the resolve he's learned from his mother Lena, who works double shifts at the diner to keep their lights on. He spots the silver Cadillac first, its sleek frame and alien presence against the dusty roadside. The car is tilted awkwardly, one tire flat, its chrome rim kissing the gravel. Behind the wheel sits Charles Hargrove, a man whose tailored suit and silver hair scream wealth. At 68, Charles is a retired real estate tycoon, his life a tapestry of boardrooms and country clubs, where problems are solved with a phone call or a check. Today, though, his phone is useless, no signal out here, and his impatience simmers as he taps the steering wheel, the air conditioner's hum a feeble shield against the heat. He's not used to waiting, not used to being stuck. Jamal slows his pace, squinting at the car. He could keep walking head home to the small house where Lena will be waiting with a plate of cornbread and greens. But something in the man's slumped posture, the way his hand rubs his temple, pulls Jamal closer. He adjusts his backpack and steps onto the gravel, his sneakers crunching softly. "Need a hand, sir," he calls, his voice clear but gentle, cutting through the cicada's drone. Charles startles his head, snapping up. He peers through the tinted window, taking in the boy's lean frame, the faded clothes, the earnest expression. A flicker of unease crosses his face out here, alone with a stranger, but it's quickly buried under necessity. "Flat tire," he says, gruffly, stepping out of the car. The heat hits him like a wall, and he loosens his tie. "You know anything about cars, kid?" Jamal nods, kneeling beside the tire without hesitation. "My uncle taught me a thing or two." His hands move with quiet confidence, pulling the jack and spare from the trunk as if he's done this 100 times. Charles watches, arms crossed, his discomfort growing. This boy with his worn jeans and steady hands doesn't fit the neat boxes Charles has built for people like him. The town's whispers echo in his mind, lazy, untrustworthy, always wanting a handout. Yet here's Jamal working in the blistering heat for a stranger asking nothing. The injustice stings, though. Jamal doesn't show it. He's felt the weight of those assumptions his whole life, the way teachers skip over him in class, assuming he's not college material, or how the hardware store clerk trails him down the aisles. Each slight is a pinprick, sharp but familiar. He tightens the lug nuts, his jaw set, his focus unwavering. Charles shifts his weight, clearing his throat. "You're good at this," he says, the words awkward, almost reluctant. Jamal glances up, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Thanks. Just doing what I can." He wipes his hands on his jeans and steps back, the new tire gleaming in the sunlight. Charles reaches for his wallet, pulling out a crisp 50. "Here, take it. You earned it." Jamal's smile fades and he shakes his head, stepping back. "Appreciate it, sir, but I'm good." His voice is firm, his eyes holding Charles' gaze for a moment longer than expected. There's no anger, just a quiet dignity that makes Charles' hand freeze, the bill dangling uselessly. "What do you mean you're good?" Charles's tone sharpens, a mix of confusion and irritation. He's not used to being refused, not used to kindness without strings. Jamal just shrugs, adjusting his backpack. Just happy to help. He turns, walking back toward the road, his shadow stretching long behind him. Charles stands rooted, the money still in his hand, watching the boy's figure shrink against the horizon. The moment lingers heavy with unspoken truths. Charles climbs back into the Cadillac, the leather seat cool against his back, but his mind is restless. He's met thousands of people, investors, clients, politicians, but none like this boy whose refusal of payment feels like a mirror held up to Charles' life. The wealth, the status, the carefully curated distance from people like Jamal, it all feels hollow now. He starts the engine, but his eyes keep flicking to the rearview mirror where Jamal's silhouette is barely visible. Back in Cloverdale, Jamal pushes open the creaky door of his home, the smell of Lena's cooking wrapping around him like a hug. The house is small, the paint peeling the furniture, patched but clean. Lena, 42, looks up from the stove, her apron dusted with flour. "You're late," she says, her voice warm but tired. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, Mama," Jamal says, dropping his backpack. "Just helped a guy with his car." He doesn't mention the money, doesn't mention the way Charles' eyes narrowed at first, sizing him up. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. Lena studies him, her gaze sharp but soft. She knows the world her son walks through, the one that sees his worn clothes before it sees his heart. "You're a good kid, Jamal," she says, turning back to the stove. "Don't let nobody tell you different." Jamal nods, but his thoughts drift to the man in the Cadillac, to the weight of that $50 bill, to the way it felt to walk away. The linoleum floor creaks under his feet as he heads to his room, the faint hum of the town outside, a reminder of the eyes that watch him, judge him, dismiss him. But in his chest, there's a spark, small, steady, unyielding. It's the same spark that carried him to that car, that kept his hands steady, that let him say no to the money. It's the spark of who he is, and no one can take that away. The morning sun filters through the blinds of Charles Hargrove's sprawling estate, casting slatted shadows across the polished oak of his study. At 68, Charles is a man accustomed to control his life, a carefully orchestrated symphony of wealth and influence. But today his coffee sits untouched, the steam curling into the air as he stares out the window, the memory of Jamal's refusal burning in his mind. The boy's words, "just happy to help," echo like a challenge, unsettling the foundations of Charles' world. He's spent decades measuring worth in dollars, deals, and status, yet a teenager in worn sneakers has upended it all with a single act of grace. Charles leans back in his leather chair, the faint creak of it the only sound in the room. His home is a monument to success: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, walls lined with art he barely notices anymore. But it feels sterile now, a hollow contrast to the warmth he imagines in Jamal's modest world. The boy's dignity, his quiet strength gnaws at Charles, exposing a truth he's long ignored: his wealth has insulated him from connection, from meaning. He thinks of his own youth scraping by in a mill town, his parents' calloused hands teaching him grit. Somewhere along the way, he traded that for power, and now he's not sure what's left. He drives back to Route 17 in the Cadillac's hum, a steady pulse against the rural quiet. Cloverdale unfolds around him, clapboard houses, a gas station with a flickering sign, a diner where locals linger over coffee. It's a world apart from his gated community, and he feels like an intruder, his suit too crisp, his car too shiny. He's not sure what he's looking for, but Jamal's face, those steady eyes, that fleeting smile pulls him forward. He stops at the diner, the bell above the door jangling as he steps inside. The air smells of bacon and syrup, and a waitress glances at him, her expression neutral but wary. "Excuse me," Charles says, his voice too formal for the worn countertops. "I'm looking for a boy, maybe 15, helped me with a flat tire yesterday. Wore a red shirt, kind of lanky." The waitress, her name tag reading Doris, raises an eyebrow, sizing him up. "Sounds like Jamal Carter," she says, wiping her hands on her apron. "Kid's always fixing something for somebody. Lives over on Maple with his mama Lena." Charles nods, a strange relief washing over him. "Maple, thank you." He leaves a tip, though Doris didn't ask for one, and heads back to his car. The drive to Maple Street is short, the road narrowing as the houses grow smaller, their porches sagging under years of neglect. Jamal's home is unmistakable, a squat, weathered bungalow with peeling blue paint and a front yard dotted with dandelions. The porch steps creak under Charles' weight as he hesitates, his polished shoes out of place on the cracked wood. He knocks the sound sharp in the morning stillness. Lena Carter opens the door, her face lined with the quiet exhaustion of a woman who's carried too much for too long. At 42, she's a pillar in Cloverdale, her diner shifts and fierce love for Jamal holding their world together. Her eyes narrow slightly, taking in Charles' suit, his stiff posture. "Can I help you?" she asks, her voice polite but guarded, a mother's instinct kicking in. Charles clears his throat, suddenly aware of how he must look a rich outsider intruding on her space. Good morning, I'm Charles Hargrove. Your son Jamal helped me with my car yesterday. I wanted to thank him properly. He wouldn't take anything for it. His words feel clumsy, inadequate against the weight of what he's trying to convey. Lena's expression softens, but only slightly. That's my Jamal, she says, a flicker of pride in her eyes. He's out back working on his bike. You're welcome to wait. She steps aside and Charles enters, the air inside warm with the scent of coffee and fresh laundry. The living room is small, the furniture patched but tidy, the walls adorned with photos of Jamal, grinning at a school fair holding a fishing pole, his smile a constant in every frame. It's a far cry from Charles's sterile mansion, yet it hums with life, with love. He follows Lena to the backyard where Jamal is crouched over an old bicycle, a wrench in his hand. The boy looks up, his eyes widening in surprise. Mr. Hargrove, he says, standing wiping his hands on his jeans. What are you doing here? His tone is curious, not defensive, but there's a steadiness that makes Charles feel exposed, as if Jamal sees through the suit to the man beneath. I couldn't stop thinking about yesterday, Charles admits, his voice quieter now. You helped me when you didn't have to. Most people, they don't do that. He pauses, searching for words. I wanted to make sure you were okay. Jamal shrugs, a small smile tugging at his lips. We're all right, just doing what we do. He glances at Lena, who watches from the porch, her arms crossed. The moment is charged, the air thick with unspoken judgments, not from Jamal, but from the world that's taught Charles to see people like him as less. The injustice is subtle but real, the way Cloverdale's wealthier residents drive past Maple Street without a glance, the way Jamal's teachers overlook his potential, assuming his future is already written. It's a prejudice woven into the town's fabric, one Jamal navigates daily with a grace Charles can't fathom. Lena steps forward, her voice firm but kind. You didn't have to come all this way, Mr. Hargrove. Jamal's got a good heart. Always has. Her words are a shield protecting her son from whatever this stranger might want. Charles nods, his throat tight. He wants to say more, to explain the restlessness that drove him here, but the words don't come. Instead, he looks at Jamal at the bike, half fixed at the sparse yard with its patchy grass and rusted swing set. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. The visit ends too soon. Lena's politeness a gentle nudge for Charles to leave. He drives back to his estate, the Cadillac's hum a stark contrast to the creak of Jamal's porch. His mind races, replaying the boy's smile, Lena's wary gaze, the warmth of their home. He thinks of his own life, decades spent chasing wealth-building walls between himself and others. Jamal's act of kindness was a crack in those walls, letting light seep through. Charles doesn't know what comes next, but he knows he can't go back to the man he was. Not after this. Back on Maple Street, Jamal returns to his bike, the wrench cool in his hand. Lena watches from the kitchen window, her heart heavy with pride and worry. She knows the world. Her son faces the one that sees his worth only when it suits them. You be careful, Jamal, she murmurs, though he can't hear her. Folks like that don't always stay kind. But Jamal, turning the wrench, feels that spark in his chest again, small, steady, unyielding. It's the spark that carried him to Charles' car, that let him walk away from the money, that keeps him moving forward, no matter what Cloverdale thinks. The Cloverdale sun hangs low, painting the town in shades of amber, as Jamal pedals his newly fixed bike down Maple Street. The air is thick with the scent of cut grass and distant barbecue, a small town symphony that feels both comforting and confining. At 15, Jamal is used to the rhythm of this place, the way neighbors wave, but keep their distance, the way wealthier folks from the west side avoid eye contact. The prejudice here is quiet, a subtle dismissal, woven into glances and assumptions, pegging him as less because of his address, his clothes, his mother's endless shifts at the diner. But Jamal rides with his head high, the spark in his chest burning steady, a silent vow to prove them wrong. He coasts past the hardware store where the clerk once trailed him, assuming he'd steal. The memory stings, a pinprick of injustice he's learned to carry. He thinks of Charles Hargrove's visit yesterday, the man's polished shoes on their creaky porch, his awkward gratitude. Jamal doesn't know what to make of it, why a stranger with a Cadillac would care enough to show up. He shakes his head, focusing on the road. His mother's words echo, folks like that don't always stay kind. Lena's caution is a shield forged from years of disappointment, but Jamal's heart leans toward hope, toward the possibility that Charles saw something real in him. Across town, Charles sits in his study, the silence of his estate pressing against him. The walls lined with framed accolades feel like a cage now, each plaque a reminder of a life spent chasing the wrong things. He sips his bourbon, the glass cool in his hand, but it does little to quiet the restlessness that Jamal's kindness has stirred. The boy's refusal of money, his easy smile, his mother's fierce pride. They've cracked open a part of Charles he thought was long buried. He remembers his own childhood, a cramped apartment in a mill town, his father's rough hands teaching him to fix a tire, his mother's voice urging him to be better. Somewhere along the way, he traded that grit for wealth, and now he's staring at the quad. He drives to Cloverdale, again the Cadillac cutting through the morning mist. He tells himself it's curiosity, but it's more a pull he can't name. He parks near the diner, watching locals shuffle in and out, their laughter spilling onto the sidewalk. He spots Lena through the window, her apron tied tight, her movements quick but graceful as she pours coffee. Charles hesitates, then steps inside the bell, jangling. Lena looks up, her eyes narrowing for a fraction of a second before softening into polite recognition. "Mr. Hargrove," she says, wiping her hands. "Back so soon." Charles shifts his suit, feeling too stiff in the diner's warmth. "I wanted to see how you and Jamal are doing," he says, the words careful. "That boy, he's something special." Lena's smile is small but real, though her gaze holds a mother's wariness. "He is, always has been." She gestures to a stool, coffee. He nods, sitting as she pours. The diner hums with life, truckers joking, a waitress calling out orders, the clink of plates. Charles feels out of place, his wealth a barrier he's only now beginning to see. "Jamal didn't have to help me," he says almost to himself. "Most people would have taken the money." Lena leans against the counter, her expression unreadable. "Jamal's not most people. He sees folks for who they are, not what they got." Her words land like a quiet rebuke, and Charles feels the weight of his own assumptions, the way he'd sized Jamal up, expecting a kid looking for a handout. The injustice of it, the way Cloverdale's wealthier residents dismiss families like Lena's, twists in his gut. He thinks of the town's west side with its manicured lawns and gated drives, a world that's never had to scrabble like Maple Street. "Does he get that from you?" Charles asks, his voice softer now. Lena's eyes flicker with something, pride maybe, or pain. "I try to teach him right, but this town, it don't always make it easy." She turns away, busying herself with a rag, but Charles catches the tightness in her jaw, the weight of years spent fighting for her son's place in a world quick to judge. Later, Charles finds Jamal at the community center, where the boy is helping repair a basketball hoop. The cord is cracked, the paint faded, but Jamal works with focus, his hands steady as he tightens bolts. A few kids linger nearby, watching with a mix of awe and envy. One of them, a wiry boy named Trey, mutters, "Why you always doing stuff for free, Jamal? Ain't nobody paying you." The words carry the town's cynicism, a reminder of the prejudice that assumes Jamal's kindness is weakness. Jamal glances up, his smile easy but firm. "Don't need pay to do what's right, Trey." His voice is quiet, but it carries, and Trey falls silent, kicking at the pavement. Charles, standing at the court's edge, feels a pang of admiration. Jamal's strength isn't loud or showy. It's in the way he keeps going, the way he holds his ground without malice. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. Charles approaches his shadow falling across the court. "Mind if I join you?" he asks, his tone tentative. Jamal looks up, surprised but not unwelcoming. "Sure, Mr. Hargrove. You know how to fix a hoop." There's a teasing lilt to his voice, and Charles chuckles, rolling up his sleeves. "I might be rusty, but I'll try." They work side by side, the clank of tools mingling with the kids' chatter. Charles feels the eyes of the community center's director, a woman who watches him with the same wariness Lena did. He's an outsider here, his wealth a silent accusation. The injustice of it, how Jamal's world is dismissed by people like Charles once was, settles deeper. He thinks of Lena's words of the town that doesn't make it easy. He thinks of his own life, the boardrooms where he'd ignored the struggles of people like Jamal, assuming they were someone else's problem. As the sun dips, Jamal wipes his hands, the hoop now steady. "Looks good," he says, grinning. Charles nods, but his mind is elsewhere, turning over an idea too big to ignore. He sees Jamal's home in his mind, the peeling paint, the rusted swing set, the love that holds it together despite everything. He sees Lena's tired eyes, Jamal's quiet spark, and he knows with a clarity he hasn't felt in years that he has to do something. Not for charity, not for gratitude, but because it's right. Back at his estate, Charles paces his phone lighting up with calls he ignores. He's thinking of contractors, of plans of a way to give back without overstepping. He's thinking of Jamal's smile, of Lena's strength, of a town that's overlooked them for too long. The spark Jamal lit is growing and Charles is ready to let it burn. The Cloverdale dawn breaks soft and golden, but there's a hum of anticipation on Maple Street. Jamal wakes to the sound of trucks rumbling outside their engines, a foreign pulse against the usual quiet of his neighborhood. He rubs sleep from his eyes and peers through the cracked blinds of his bedroom, where posters of engineers and blueprints are taped to the walls. Outside, a small fleet of work vans lines the curb, men in hard hats unloading lumber and tools. Jamal's heart skips a mix of confusion and curiosity. He pulls on his jeans and hurries to the porch where Lena stands, her arms crossed, her face a mask of disbelief. "What's going on?" Mama Jamal asks, his voice low, as if speaking too loudly might break the scene unfolding before them. Lena shakes her head, her eyes fixed on the man directing the crew. Charles Hargrove, his suit traded for a crisp button-down, a clipboard in hand. The sight of him here in their world feels like a dream misplaced. Lena's voice is tight. "I don't know, Jamal, but I don't trust easy." Charles spots them and approaches his steps careful, as if he's crossing a line he knows he hasn't earned. The morning light catches the silver in his hair. But his face is softer now, stripped of the arrogance Jamal first saw by the roadside. "Good morning," Charles says, his voice steady but laced with something vulnerable. "I owe you an explanation." Lena's gaze sharpens, a mother's instinct flaring. "You owe us nothing, Mr. Hargrove. What's all this?" She gestures to the workers who are already measuring the porch, their hammers echoing like a heartbeat. Jamal stands beside her, his hands in his pockets, his eyes flicking between Charles and the crew. The spark in his chest flickers, wary but hopeful, sensing something big. Charles takes a breath, his words measured but earnest. "Jamal helped me when I was stuck. Not just with a tire, but with seeing things clearer. You've both built something real here despite everything this town throws at you. I want to give back. Not charity, respect." He pauses, meeting Lena's eyes. "I'm fixing up your house. New porch roof, everything. No strings." The words hit like a thunderclap. Lena's hand flies to her mouth, her eyes glistening, but she doesn't speak. Jamal's breath catches his mind, racing. He sees the peeling paint, the sagging roof, the swing set that rusted long before he was born. He sees Lena's late nights, her calloused hands, the way she's stretched herself thin to keep this home standing. And now this, a stranger's gift, born from a moment of kindness on a dusty road. The injustice of Cloverdale's neglect, the way it's overlooked families like theirs, suddenly feels exposed raw in the morning light. "You can't just—" Lena starts, her voice trembling, but she stops, overwhelmed. Jamal steps forward, his voice quiet but firm. "Why, Mr. Hargrove? You don't even know us." His eyes search Charles' face, not accusing but seeking truth. Charles kneels slightly, meeting Jamal's gaze. "Because you showed me what matters, Jamal. Helping without expecting anything back. That's worth more than anything I've got." The moment is electric, a turning point that ripples through the street. Neighbors begin to gather, drawn by the noise, their whispers carrying a mix of awe and skepticism. "That's the Carter place," one says. "Who's footing the bill?" Another, a woman who once scoffed at Jamal's worn shoes, watches in silence, her face unreadable. The town's prejudice, the quiet assumption that Maple Street is less, hangs heavy, but Charles' gesture is a crack in that foundation, a challenge to Cloverdale's status quo. Work begins in earnest, the crew moving with purpose. The old porch is dismantled, its splintered wood hauled away, replaced by sturdy beams that gleam in the sun. Jamal watches, his hands itching to help, but Charles waves him off with a smile. "Let them do their job, kid. You've done enough." Lena stands by the fence, her arms still crossed, but her posture softens as she sees the care in the workers' hands, the way they nod to her with respect. Charles, clipboard in hand, feels the weight of the moment. This is no small thing, not just a renovation, but a reckoning with his own past. He thinks of the years spent in boardrooms, dismissing the struggles of people like Lena and Jamal, assuming their lives were separate from his. The injustice of it, the way his wealth blinded him, is a wound he's only now beginning to feel. He looks at Jamal, who's now talking to a worker about the tools, his eyes bright with curiosity. Charles' old self, the man who saw worth only in profit, crumbles here on this dusty street, replaced by something humbler, something real. The day wears on the house, transforming before their eyes. The roof has patched the walls, prepped for fresh paint, the swing set replaced with a new one that glints in the sunlight. Jamal climbs onto it, testing the chains, a grin breaking across his face. Mama look, he calls, and Lena's laugh, rare and bright, fills the air. Charles watches from the sidelines, his throat tight. He thinks of his own home, its marble floors cold and empty, and knows this warmth is what he's been missing. But the town's eyes are on them now, and not all are kind. A man in a pickup slows down, his gaze hard. Waste of money, he mutters loud enough for Charles to hear. The words are a reminder of Cloverdale's divide, the way wealth and status draw lines that Jamal and Lena have always lived on the wrong side of. Charles feels a flare of anger, but he swallows it, focusing on the boy swinging, the mother smiling, the house rising anew. As dusk settles, the crew packs up, leaving a half-finished masterpiece. The porch is nearly complete, its wood smooth and strong, a promise of what's to come. Lena approaches Charles, her voice soft but steady. "I don't know how to thank you," she says, her eyes searching his. It's more than we ever expected." Charles shakes his head, his voice low. "You don't owe me anything. This is because of Jamal. Because of you." He looks at the boy now, helping a worker stack lumber, his energy boundless. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled, and Charles knows this is only the beginning. The neighbors linger, their whispers softening into something like respect. The woman who once scoffed now offers Lena a nod, a small gesture but heavy with meaning. Cloverdale is watching, and Charles feels the weight of it, not just a house but a statement, a spark that could change more than Maple Street. He drives home under a sky streaked with orange, his heart fuller than it's been in years, knowing tomorrow will bring more work, more change, more truth. The Cloverdale morning blooms with a quiet promise, the air crisp as the renovation on Maple Street nears its end. Jamal stands in his front yard, his sneakers sinking into fresh sod, his eyes wide as he takes in the transformed house. The once peeling bungalow now stands proud, its new porch gleaming, its roof sturdy, its walls painted a soft gray that catches the sunlight. The swing set in the back, no longer a rusted relic, sways gently in the breeze, a symbol of something reclaimed. At 15, Jamal feels the weight of this change, not just in the house, but in the spark in his chest, stronger now, a fire kindled by his own kindness, and Charles Hargrove's response. Lena beside him rests a hand on his shoulder, her face a mix of gratitude and wonder, her usual exhaustion softened by hope. The street buzzes with life. Neighbors once distant gather in small clusters, their voices a low hum of awe and curiosity. The crew works with final touches, polishing windows, planting shrubs, while Charles directs them, his clipboard set aside, his sleeves rolled up. At 68, he's a man remade, the cold detachment of his past life shed like an old skin. Jamal's act of fixing his tire, his refusal of money, his quiet dignity, it's all unraveled. Charles showing him a truth he'd forgotten: life's worth isn't in wealth, but in connection, in showing up for others. The injustice of Cloverdale's prejudice, the way it dismissed Jamal and Lena for their modest means, lingers in his mind, a wrong he's determined to right, not just here, but beyond. Lena watches Charles, her wariness fading into something like trust. She thinks of the years spent shielding Jamal from the town's judgments, the whispers that pegged him as less, the teachers who overlooked his potential, the neighbors who crossed the street to avoid them. Each slight was a stone in her heart, but Jamal's strength, his choice to help a stranger on Route 17, has lifted them. "You did this, baby," she murmurs, squeezing Jamal's shoulder. He grins, shy but proud. "I just fixed a tire, Mama." Across the yard, Charles catches the exchange, his throat tightening. He thinks of his own home, its marble floors silent, its rooms empty of laughter. He thinks of the boardrooms where he'd ignored the struggles of people like Lena, assuming their lives were separate, insignificant. That Charles is gone now, humbled by a boy's spark, by a mother's resilience. He approaches them, his steps slow, his voice steady. "This house," he says, gesturing to the bungalow, "it's yours, but it's also a start. I want to do more for you, for this town." Lena's eyes narrow slightly, searching for motive, but she finds only sincerity. "You've done enough, Mr. Hargrove," she says, her voice soft but firm. It's a home now, more than I ever dreamed for us." Jamal nods, his gaze steady. "It's perfect," he says, and the simplicity of his words cuts through Charles, a reminder of the boy's ability to see beauty in what's real. The neighbors draw closer, their skepticism melting into celebration. A woman once quick to judge Jamal's worn clothes offers Lena a basket of homemade jam, her smile tentative but genuine. A man who'd muttered about wasted money now claps Charles on the shoulder, his gruff voice warm. Didn't think you had it in you, Hargrove. The town's divide, once a chasm, begins to narrow, not erased but softened by, this moment, by Jamal's spark that lit a fire no one expected. Jamal climbs onto the swing set, pushing off with a laugh that echoes through the yard. Kids from the neighborhood join him, their voices bright. Their joy, a contrast to the town's old cynicism. Charles watches a warmth spreading in his chest and knows this is what he's been chasing. Not wealth, not status, but this simple, unfiltered connection. He thinks of his own youth of parents who taught him to give without expecting return and realizes he's come full circle, guided by a boy who never lost that lesson. Lena steps onto the porch, her fingers tracing the smooth railing, her eyes distant but peaceful. She thinks of the nights she lay awake worrying about bills, about Jamal's future in a world that didn't see him. Now standing in this new home, she feels a weight lift, not just from the house, but from her soul. Cloverdale isn't perfect. Prejudice lingers subtle and stubborn. But today it's a place where kindness won, where her son's heart changed a stranger, a street, a town. Charles joins her, leaning against the railing, the wood solid under his hands. I spent years building things, skyscrapers, investments. He says, his voice low. None of it felt like this. Lena nods, her smile faint but real. That's what Jamal does. He makes things matter. Her words are a quiet truth, a testament to the boy swinging in the yard, to the spark that started it all. In a nation built on second chances, this story is a slow, graceful reminder. True wealth lies in generosity and the courage to see beyond status, to act with heart. Jamal's small gesture, fixing a tire, walking away from money, rippled outward, reshaping a man, a home, a community. It's not about revenge or loud triumphs, but about quiet victories, the kind that restore dignity, that remind us who we can be. Cloverdale will carry this moment not as a fairy tale, but as a truth. One spark can light a fire, and that fire can warm a world. Some truths linger waiting to be unveiled, and here on Maple Street, they shine.